God, that as we open up the written word, that Jesus Christ, the living word, would come and breathe on what is said and in us and work through us, so that we might be living in the word. And I pray that we'd be carriers of that word in the way that we live and conduct our lives. And I pray that the light and life of Jesus would be more powerful in our witness as a result of just responding to you today. And I ask that there be future glory for Jesus, because he is the only one that is worthy to receive the honor and the glory and the blessing. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So today's message is entitled, What Would God Ask You? You know, if God were to ask a question, what would God ask you? Very often people sort of have that the other way around. You know, if God were here, what question would you ask him? If Jesus was here, what would you say to him? What would you want to know about? But God asks a question of us. And I don't know whether any of you know what the first question that is in the Bible. Does anybody know what it is and where it is? And yeah, where are you? Yeah. It's in Genesis chapter 3, and the story's sort of from verses 8 through to 10, I guess, from today. But let's ask some simple questions, right? Who is it who asks the question? God. Who does he ask it to? Adam, right? And in some versions, the text actually has God speaking Adam's name as well. He's not just saying, in the King James version, it's just where art thou? You know, where are you? But in some versions, it says, Adam, where are you? Right? So what is the significance of God actually addressing that question to a specific person and situation?
Well, he knows where you are, precisely, not just geographically, but spiritually and everything else.
That's it. He knows. So the first two words that came out there, he knows.
It's a rhetorical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where are you? I'm saying to you, where are you?
Adam, where are you? Yeah.
Where are you in your sin?
Yeah. So God knows. That's the point, isn't it? To sort of really bring out God. First of all, God knows your name. He knows your situation. He knows everything about you. If you're a reader of the Bible, you'll know, as you sort of keep reading it, that there are these various sort of parts of the Bible that reveal something much bigger about God. Sometimes it's revealed initially to individuals, like Jeremiah. You know, he was known before there was creation. I mean, that's completely mind-blowing, isn't it? That God knows even before he had existence. Or, I don't know, Psalm 139. You knew me before I was formed in my mother's womb. You know, you just think, wow. God knows. But what a comfort that can be as well to us, right? You know, sometimes when someone calls your name, depending on who it is and what you've been doing, depends on whether it's a good thing or not. You know, we used to have a teacher at school, Mr. Hunter, his name was, and he could put fear into the heart of any boy just by calling their name down the corridor. And if he would sort of say, "Stallard," you would think, "Oh no, you know, what have I done? I'm in trouble now." You know, just because you would immediately sort of think, yeah, I'm in trouble now, what have I done? Now, I don't know the tone of God's voice in that call, but I don't suppose he was sort of saying like, Adam! You know, You're in for it now, son. I've got something on you, and I'm going to sort you out, you know. I imagine that the tone was quite warm. And it wasn't with a question like, where are you? I don't know where you are, you know. Because God knows, as you've pointed out. God knows. God knew. God knew even before he created Adam where Adam would be at this particular moment in space and time and what he would have done. And where was he? And what had he done? He was hiding. Knowledge of good and evil. Yeah. And they've partaken of that. Now they're from the standpoint of evil. They're spiritually dead now inside, even though they're physically alive. Whereas when they were created, they were physically alive and spiritually alive. But now they don't know God because they're spiritually dead. They realize their nakedness. They've covered themselves. They're hiding from God. And there's God coming in the cool of the evening in the garden to commune with Adam. Probably something that they'd done many, many times before. And this time God is not sort of saying, you know, are we playing hide and seek here? Where are you? God knew exactly where he was and knew what had taken place. God knows everything, even before the foundation of the world. He knew that this was going to be the situation. And Adam had blown it and Eve had blown it big time. And yet God is coming and still wanting to have relationship with those that he's created. Don't you think that's quite remarkable? God has made perfection and given everything perfect to what he has created, and given that creation to the charge and the joyful responsibility of enjoying and discovering it and exploring it more and more and more. And yet, knowing what Adam was going to do and how he was going to blow it, God still gives him that opportunity. But Adam has chosen now to go it alone, without God. And you know, that is the place, if you like, of every human being that has been born since on the planet, isn't it? That we are physically alive. We have something in us that the Bible calls our soul, which gives us some sort of inner life, but it's not full spiritual life. Every human being, if they are honest and have integrity to themselves, know that there's something missing. The Bible says that God has placed eternity into the hearts of men. In other words, there's a sort of longing in every human being that we know that there's something more. And here is God coming to the place of failure, the person of failure, the complete mess up. And he's coming with I believe, a warm tone as he says, Adam, where are you? And he's not asking a question that he doesn't know the answer to. He knows exactly what's gone on. So then you have to say, why is it then that God asks the question?
Want to bring him out of hiding?
Maybe. Maybe to think, to acknowledge, to understand. Now, supposing God were to put your name in the sentence and say your name and where are you? And then pause for response. It's quite a powerful thing, isn't it? And God knows where you are. Now, I know that each person that's here today is a Christian who's born again. But it's still a question that God could ask us sometimes, isn't it? Where are you now with all of this? In the journey that you've had with me, where are you right now? For people that are not Christians, he still comes and asks the same question. In a warm way, he knows our name, he knows the situation that we're in, but he has such a desire to bring us into relationship with him, that broken relationship that was spoiled for all of humanity. He wants to come and restore that relationship. So he comes to us by name, to the place that we are, and he asks us the question, where are you? And then, implied in the potential response that we give is that he can also say, is this really where you want to be? And that's really, I think, what was going on in the garden in Genesis chapter 3 and verses 8 to 10 in the question, when he's saying, Adam, where art thou? Supposing Adam had turned round and said, God, we're over here. We've blown it, haven't we? Supposing in his response to the question, he'd immediately said, I'm sorry, I'm repentant. God, is there anything you can do? We've really messed up here. I don't know why I was hiding. I think I was hiding because I thought you'd be angry with me, but I can tell by the fact that you've come to me that you're not angry with me, but you want to have a relationship with me, and I want to have a relationship with you. So God, please, is there anything you can do? I think God would have done something there and then. Do you know what I mean? But God, being God, knows the stubbornness of what is the heart of human beings without him. And what did Adam start to do? He started to try and justify himself. He started to try and work it out himself. They'd already made clothes for themselves. They'd already hidden from God. They didn't want to be in the light of his sort of standard. They knew that they had already fallen short. But they're going to try to do life without God. That's what they're going to try and do. And I think what God is doing is sort of saying, in a way, how's that working out for you? And I think sometimes for us as Christians, at the stage of life that we're in, sometimes God might ask that question, where are you right now? Is it where you actually want to be? And how's that working for you? But by God coming to us, it's such a warm act. It's not an accusative sort of, start, you're in trouble type of idea. It's like, yeah, I want to fix this for you. Is this really where you want to be? There's the story Pilgrim's Progress, isn't there? I don't know whether you've read it, some of you, or know it or seen it, but there's a point in Christian's life where he gets a choice to take one of two roads, and both roads look like they're going in the same direction, but one is steep and hard and tough, and one is sort of much easier. So even though Christian is already, by definition in the story, is already a Christian and on the journey with God, he's still got choices that he can make whilst on the journey. And he looks at the steep way and he decides that's going to be tough. So he goes for the easier option. And the further he goes down the easier option, he knows he made the wrong choice. But the more he goes down, the further away from the destination he's getting, right? Until at one point in the story, and it is only a story, that he's in a pit. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not. He's in. I will when I'm not expecting it. When he's in a pit of despond. And he's sort of like calling out to God, can you help me? Basically. I know it's in 1600s language. I think that was when it was written, wasn't it, by John Bunyan, 1600s. He was a pilgrim preacher in Bedfordshire. I think it was 1600s. So in 1600s type of language, he's basically saying, God, help, you know. And God comes. And he lifts him out of this pit of despond, because there's no way that he can get out in his own energy. But God does not place Christian where he should have been by this time in his journey. Does anybody know in the story where he places Christian? He places him right back to the place where he made the wrong choice. He finds himself at exactly the same place, with the steep road and the easy road. And God gives him a second opportunity to try it out, if you like, the first responsibility over again. Much to say, have you learned anything? In the story, Christian decides to go the steep and the narrow, less trodden path. And he keeps finding God along the way. And of course, if you know the story, I know this isn't a spoiler alert, but he gets there, you know, he gets all the way, which is great, even though there's so many distractions along the way. Where are you in your journey? There's a couple of additional things that I'd like to just sort of bring out from this thought, and that's this, that over several weeks, I've been sort of impressed in my sort of heart and soul about the possibility of God's sudden intervention. And I've already said that we'll probably have several sermons illustrating this, you know, what sometimes is called the suddenly of God. But what an encouragement that is for you and for me right now, because honestly, we look at where we are right now, whether we, you know, where we are spiritually, where we are physically, where we are at this point in our life, our age, you know, and we might sort of say, do you know what? It doesn't look great where I am right now. It just doesn't look great. And we might then look to God and think, oh, you know, so I'm such a long way from where it could be and where it should be and where I could be and where I should be. And we look at Jaywick even and we think, oh, it's just, you know, I don't want to keep playing that constant record that gets, you know, the sort of recorded thing that gets said, oh, it's the worst place and all that sort of thing. But we know that's the backdrop of what's being said all the time. That's why I wanted us to sing that song today, You Say, because it lives between the backdrop of what is constantly being spoken. You know, I'm never good enough. It's never going to be any different. I constantly fail. But you say, God, that I'm loved, even when I don't feel love. That's the whole thing about the relationship with God. It's declarations that he has made, irrespective of whether we join in or not. I think sometimes we confuse spirituality with our feelings. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, so I don't feel loved, therefore we respond as if we're not loved. We behave as if we're not loved. And that's what we feel, and that we constantly feed that lack of feeling loved. And yet, God says, you're loved. You're my child. You belong to me. I'm giving you a new hope and a new destiny. But going back to this suddenly idea, we look at where we're at, and it doesn't feel great, does it? You know, and we look at what needs, you know, even what we can see needs to be done. And it just seems like, how can that ever happen? Right? And do you know what can happen? when you keep on that journey, do you know where you end up? In the pit of despond. You find that you can't do anything at all. You're completely unable to do anything to change the situation that you're in. But suddenly, right? See, God is the God of the suddenly, even though in every situation that I can find in the Bible, people should not be surprised that God turns up, because invariably he's already promised that he will. But in the situations that we'll probably look at over a period of weeks, he turns up, and when he does, it feels to the people that are there totally unexpected. It's like, wow, suddenly, right? Let me give you a quick and easy example so that I don't have to sort of preach that now, but just think about Pentecost, right? You've got 120 people in a prayer meeting, and they're praying, and I guess they must be thinking, what's going to happen? How are we going to, where is this promise of Jesus being with us? It's been a long time now. I'm sure for them it felt like it was a really long time. It's not really a very long time, is it? Between Jesus saying in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, wait here in Jerusalem and I will send you my Spirit and he will enable you, the equipper, for you to be witnesses here in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And they've started a prayer meeting on the basis of that promise, I'm sure. And they've done pretty well. I have never been in a prayer meeting where there's 120 people, by the way. Right? They're usually the least attended type of Christian activity that you can get is a prayer meeting when people are seeking after God. That's the one where you actually discover, in a sense, the true seekers, the people that know where they are, but they know the solution to where they are is just more of God. So they meet to pray, to seek God's face, to find out what it is that God is going to do. But there they are, and they're doing that. But what happens in the middle of the prayer meeting? And it's not just the first prayer meeting, they've had several. They've probably been meeting on a daily basis even. But they've done pretty well, haven't they? From 12 to 120 at a prayer meeting. But still, nothing's happening. But what happens? Suddenly there's a sound, like mighty waters rushing over a waterfall. I've never been to Niagara Falls, but I know people that have, and they say the sound is just a roar, And I guess at different times it's even louder if, according to the particular flow on the day that you might have gone. And there's this roar. And they're you can almost imagine them sort of opening their eyes in the prayer meeting to sort of look around. Can anyone else hear this, or is this just something in my head? And as they look around, what do they see above the heads of each person? A flame of fire. I've been in prayer meetings where it's difficult to interrupt the person that's praying, but you feel like you should, I think if I were in that prayer meeting, I would say, Mrs. Jones, your hair is on fire, But everyone had got this flame of fire. And then what happened? They're so filled with God that they spill out onto the street and they start to declare the wonders of God in languages that they themselves didn't know. And then what happens? People that have gathered for the feast from Cappadocia and Mesopotamia, and if ever you're asked to do the reading for Pentecost Sunday, say no, because there's some places that are very hard to pronounce in the reading. But anyway, There's people from all the different places, the Cretians and the all the different people. But what they do is they come to this, what sounds like a babbling sounds, but they declare, how comes you're declaring the wonders of God in my mother tongue, in my language? They're filled with a boldness, and they speak out in a language that they've never learned to a situation that seemed absolutely impossible before is now becoming possible in their very presence. How can they ever reach the world? Well, quite a lot of the world are gathered in Jerusalem from all these different places. And now they've been enabled by the Spirit to be able to speak in languages that they'd never learned, the wonders of God, and there is a response. There are other people that come and mock and say, these people are drunk. Peter stands up, the broken Peter, who's big time failure, who's denied Jesus 3 times around a fire. He stands up and says, these people are not drunk as you suppose. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. And he preaches a sermon that lasts 2 minutes, if you read it out loud. And then they're calling out in the middle of his sermon. Not many people do that these days either. There's often a call in sermons for people to respond, but people were already responding because the Spirit was there. And they're calling out. What do they call out? What must I do to be saved? They didn't even wait for the altar call, so to speak. You know, they're already saying, what are we going to do? And how many people? 3,000. Now, you couldn't make it up. But that's what the suddenly of God does. You look on one day and you look at the situation and it looks like it's impossible. But suddenly God comes and what was impossible is happening. And he's using people just like you and me to do it. Now, I hope this is encouragement to you in the sort of early stages of this year as you look to the rest of, your own journey and where we are here in Jaywick and all the different things and our ages and, the small numbers of people that are here and all that. I hope that it speaks to all of that. And God just says, where are you right now? And you say to God, this is where I am. But remember, God can come and do things suddenly. And he does it in such a way as to bring glory to himself. So the question that God asks Adam is a question that he asks every human being. You've already, because you're a born-again Christian, you've already responded at one level to that question. And you've told God where you are and that you're in need of saving and you're in need of grace and you're in need of forgiveness and you're in need of him. And now you've been on a journey for however long you've been on the journey, and he can still keep asking the question, where are you now? Where are you? I'm not saying it to condemn you. I'm just saying, where are you? Just tell me where you are, because I've come to be with you where you are. Have you ever heard of the word theophany? It's not a person's name. Yeah. The showing of God. It's a good description of a theophany. God showing up, right? This is also the first theophany. This is God turning up into a broken, completely spoiled and ruined situation. And he does it time and time again throughout the biblical history. And Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 1 tells us that he has done it in so many various ways at various times through various people and various prophets, but he has now spoken to us through his Son. The greatest theophany is Jesus Christ coming. But we can look at different times when God has come in the Old Testament, different times when he's come in the New Testament after people have discovered Jesus Christ. He's just turned up. And this is our God. If you've got a God that's different to that, you haven't got the right God. You know, where are you even in your understanding of God? Have you got a God that can speak into nothing and create something? Have you got a God that can speak creation and creative order into complete and utter mess and chaos? Because that's who God is. Sometimes the God that we have so far in our understanding of who God is just not big enough. I know these are simple things, but God is big. And he wants to display his greatness through people like you and me that are broken and not much, and in situations and circumstances that we wish were different. But God is God, and he's able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. Now, I'm aware of time. I've been preaching for 31 minutes and 48 seconds. There's an ongoing message, I guess, here, that God is going to show us that he's a God who can turn up and do miraculous things. Let's just bow our heads in prayer for a moment. God, through today's message, I'm asking you to speak to me and to speak to each of us individually, and to lovingly and kindly call my name and ask me the question, where are you? And God can only respond with an honest heart and an honest response. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to be like Adam. I'm not even going to blame you, which is what he did. But I'm going to say it like it is and tell you like it is. I'm going to tell you where I am, knowing that you can do miraculous things and that you can change things, and you can change me, and you can change my family, and you can change my friends, and you can change the community, and you can change a nation, and you can change the world, because you're the creator of it. And everything is held together by your very power. And I pray, God, that you will demonstrate, even through the suddenness of your coming, your immense greatness and your desire to bring into relationship again all that you have created. And I pray that we will have faith, confidence to continue step by step through what might be a steep and a tough and a difficult road. But I pray and thank you that you have promised that you can do the immeasurably more than we can ask, more than we can imagine. And we ask you to get your glory And our hearts say, even so, Lord, quickly come. Amen.